I told my boss I was ready for the big presentation tomorrow. He looked up from his monitor, eyes flat as glass, and said quietly, "Alex, that presentation was last week." At first I thought he was joking. The hum of the office printer filled the silence. The smell of burnt coffee and dry toner clung to the air. Then I saw it. His expression didn't change. No hint of a smile. He meant it. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean last week?" I asked. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "You didn't show. Martin covered for you." The name landed like a nail in my gut. Martin. The co-worker I'd mentored. The one who used to ask me how to run demos, how to make client decks sing. "I didn't," I started, but he raised a hand, cutting me off. "Let's not make excuses. You missed it. The client wasn't impressed. We'll talk later." The words echoed in my head as I stood there, frozen. People pretended to work, but I could feel their eyes. The soft tapping of keyboards wasn't real. It was cover noise. Someone snickered. I didn't turn to see who. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. That presentation wasn't just another task. It was the presentation, the renewal pitch for our biggest client, Valion Systems. 3 months of late nights, endless revisions, financial models, product mock-ups. Everything led to that. And now, apparently, it had happened without me. I walked back to my desk like a man walking through rain. Slow, heavy, unreal. My Outlook calendar was still open. There it was. Valion Renewal Strategy. 10 a.m., April 12th. Tomorrow. Bright blue block. I clicked it. The invite was still there. But something had changed. The line under the date said, "Last updated. April 5th. Martin R." No. I scrolled through the history. The invite had been moved a week earlier. April 12th. April 5th. Then marked private. And I wasn't on the updated attendee list. I sat there, staring at the screen, pulse in my throat. Somewhere behind me, Martin's voice floated through the air, warm and falsely casual. "Rough morning, huh, Alex?" I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the shared drive, the folder where I kept the deck, Valion Renewal V19 Final. The last edit was also April 5th. The editor tag, M. Ruskin. I clicked the version history. He hadn't even changed the file name. He'd gone through my slides, rearranged a few, and added his name to the title slide. Prepared by Martin Ruskin, Senior Strategist. My throat went dry. Around noon, I found myself in the break room, staring at the vending machine, not seeing anything. My hands were shaking, but not from panic anymore. It was something colder. My dad used to say, "When someone lies to you at work, don't shout. Document." So I did. First, screenshots, calendar version, file history, metadata, Slack timestamps, then the building logs. I still had the card access report from that day because I'd left early for a doctor's appointment, but I was in the office the entire morning of April 5th. I'd literally been down the hall when my own presentation was happening. I remembered hearing applause from the conference room around 11:30 that day. I thought it was a random client meeting. My stomach twisted. It had been my deck, my work, my voice in someone else's mouth. By 3 p.m., word had spread. Someone from accounting muttered, "He missed the biggest pitch of the year." HR sent me a meeting reminder for tomorrow. Performance review discussion. Cute, efficient, they'd already decided. I didn't reply. I didn't go to my boss again. I didn't confront Martin. Instead, I walked out. Not dramatically, just quiet. No scene. Outside, the air smelled like exhaust and rain. I stood by the curb for a long minute, watching cars move through puddles, thinking about how everything I'd built in that place could vanish with a single calendar change. When I got home, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. I scrolled through every file, every note, every shared drive entry. Every single trace of my work for that project had been reattributed. My name removed, metadata replaced. Not just by accident, systematically. This wasn't a mistake. It was a rewrite. I checked Slack next, the chat history between Martin and me. Gone. deleted threads, but one message survived, one I'd pinned months ago with project specs. The system note read, unpinned by M. Ruskin on April 5th. He'd cleaned up, but not perfectly. At 2 a.m., I finished compiling what looked less like a defense and more like a case file. Calendar log with change timestamps. Drive version history. Badge and records proving I was present. HR meeting confirmation dated after the supposed no-show. I zipped everything and named it quietly. ValianTruth.zip. Then I drafted one email, unsent, saved in drafts. Subject line, regarding presentation incident, factual timeline. Recipients, HR, legal, and one person they'd never expect. Valian's audit contact, listed in our master service agreement. Not to accuse, not yet. Just to verify records for continuity. I didn't sleep. By morning, the office was the same. Screens humming, phones blinking, people pretending to be busy. Martin walked past me with his coffee, gave me a little grin. Big day today, huh? HR meeting? Yeah, I said without looking up. Big day. He chuckled and kept walking. He didn't notice the flash drive sitting under my monitor, the one that held every log, every screenshot, every timestamp. He didn't notice that I wasn't shaking anymore, because by then I already knew what I was going to do. I got to my desk early and didn't open email. Email is where deniability lives. I opened logs, Outlook first. Calendar, event details. All changes. There it was in a neat ladder of time. Original invite created by me 8 weeks ago. Attendees. Me, boss, Valiant Core, solutions engineer. Then April 5th, 8:12 a.m. Updated date, time, changed privacy to private, modified attendees. Editor, M. Ruskin. At 8:13, remove attendee, A. Komarov. 2 minutes later, the subject line was softened from renewal strategy and risk map to quarterly catch-up. You don't rename a renewal to a catch-up unless you want fewer eyes. At 8:17, the Teams link switched to a room PC alias instead of my personal bridge. At 8:21, my reminder was deleted. That told me more than the change itself. Someone wasn't moving a meeting. They were moving me out of it. Shared drive next. Valion renewal v19. Final looked intact until you expand version history. The newest entry wasn't just a pass-through. He'd opened presenter notes, cut 3 red flags that would have forced hard questions, churn cohort analysis, SLA breach record, license utilization dip, padded 2 wins, and appended a slide with his face-sized headshot in the corner. Last editor machine name, MSAR LP02, IP, local, timestamp, same window as the calendar edits, door access. Security portal isn't pretty, but it's honest. April 5th, 7:41, lobby 7:43, 14th floor, 956 conference room, 14A, 1202 cafeteria, 618 lobby out. I was in the building, I was on the floor. Standard policy logs, the room console sign-in with a session token. I requested the export from facilities with a generic client audit support line. They sent a CSV session owner, guest presenter, drive-mounted Valion renewal, V19 final PPTX at 9:58. The room's webcam took an auto still when the call started. File name pattern stamped with epoch time. That still sits on a hidden share. People forget the room computers have memories. I didn't. Slack. Martin had deleted threads, but enterprise retention has a longer tail than pride. I filed a workspace data request citing discovery for client compliance review, the phrase that makes shoulders drop. The admin pinged me. Can you narrow scope? I gave a 2-week window. The export came as a JSON hairball, but I write quick scripts when I'm angry. I filtered by Valion and calendar. The lines I needed weren't monologues, just small bones. A DM from Martin to our solutions engineer on April 4th. If Alex asks, tell him we moved Friday to next week. He's underwater anyway. A response from the engineer. You cleared with Dan? Martin. Why? Dan is our boss. Another thread in a private channel I wasn't supposed to be in, but the export doesn't care. Remember to make the invite private. He'll crash it. He, me, it. I don't cross lines. I ask for doors that policy already built. I walk to Taylor's Cube, the only person in IT who drinks worse coffee than I do, and put a printed page down. Our acceptable use policy, line 12, about tampering with corporate records. I said, I need the team's attendance report for April 5th, room 14A, 10 to 11:30. Taylor looked at me, and then at the policy, then at my face. Are you doing this the loud way or the clean way? Clean. He typed without any extra heroics and handed me a CSV. 10 attendees, including Valian's operations director, and 2 procurement analysts. Presenters, M. Ruskin, No Akomarov. Duration, 83 minutes. Chat transcript note. Presenter uploaded file, Valian renewal v19 final.pptx. I didn't feel rage. Rage is noisy, and noise is how you miss steps. I opened a blank doc and started a memo, not a story. Stories invite debate. A timeline with exhibits invites silence. I labeled each section with a time and a source. No adjectives. 1. So wait. 21 calendar modifications. Screenshots A1, A4. 2. When I at 58. Room session mount. File system log. Screenshot B1. 3. 10 teams attendance. CSV exhibit. C. 4. Deck edits. Version diff. Exhibits D1 DOS D6. 5. Slack messages, export lines, exhibits E1, E3. 6. Badge logs, CSV exhibit F. At the end I wrote a single sentence. The above discrepancies led to misrepresentation of authorship and risk disclosure to client, increasing liability. 2 meetings to schedule. First, HR legal. Subject, factual timeline regarding Valion renewal meeting. I didn't allege motive. I asked for a policy interpretation on record changes and substitution without notice. Legal likes to interpret. HR likes to posture. Both like documents more than feelings. Second, a tiny invitation buried in the MSA with Valion. The audit clause allows either party to request a review session to reconcile deliverable variances in case of conflicting stakeholder communications. Translation: if someone told the client one thing and another thing exists, we can meet to align. I drafted a note to Valion's audit contact, neutral tone, formatted like any other hygiene touchpoint. We've noticed a variance in reported license utilization and timeline of remediation measures. We propose a 30-minute reconciliation session to align on scope so that the renewal reflects the true operational posture. No mention of office politics, no smell of blood, just process. Before sending anything, I asked myself the only question that matters in these situations. If the other side forwards this to everyone, am I still okay? If the answer is no, your email is a grenade with your fingerprint on it. I cut 2 lines, tightened 2 dates, and removed the word misrepresentation. People don't retaliate over facts. They retaliate over labels. I printed the packet because paper has a way of silencing interrupters, and booked a small room for 10 hours. Dan accepted, HR accepted, legal accepted. Martin forwarded the invite to himself and confirmed in under a minute, which was useful because email headers timestamp the speed of guilt. Before Tenaz, I walked by the wall where the Valion poster hung from last year's launch, the one I designed and someone else got photographed in front of. Old me would have paused there and felt small. New me kept walking. They were already seated, HR with a practiced empathy face, legal with a pen that only ever moves to write down your mistakes, Dan with his hands folded like he'd rather be anywhere else. Martin came in late carrying faux surprise like a prop. "What's going on?" he asked nobody and everybody. I didn't sit right away. I set the stack down, slid a copy to each person, and said, "I'd like to walk through a factual timeline so the record is correct." Legal said, "Is this a grievance?" "It is documentation," I said. HR said, "Alex, this feels adversarial." It is chronological, I said. I walked them through. Screen, page, time, artifact. No commentary. When Martin tried to talk, I made space for him with a palm toward the table, like a traffic cop for his words, and then directed attention back to Exhibit C. It wasn't theatrical. It was procedural. When I finished, I didn't ask for anything. I said, per policy, what is the guidance when a meeting for a key deliverable is moved, access restricted for the accountable owner, and the content altered to remove known risks? Legal asked for a break. HR asked for tone reset. Dan cleared his throat and said the sentence that broke his own neck. I approved a substitution because I couldn't risk you overcomplicating the message. 3 verbs, 1 admission. I wrote it down in my notebook in the same unemotional ink I'd used for timestamps. He looked at me then like he realized the sound a trap makes when it closes is also quiet. We reconvened. HR said they would review. Legal asked for electronic copies of the exhibits. I had a drive ready. I handed it to Legal, not to Dan. I stood up, thanked them, and left my last page on the table. A calendar invite for a separate call, Valayon Reconciliation, today at 2:30. I'd already received a yes from their audit contact and operations director. No claims, just alignment. Dan's eyes tracked the invite like it was a fuse. At 2:30, I joined the Valayon call from a phone room, camera on, collar straight. I didn't reference internal drama. I opened with, I want to make sure your renewal represents reality, not optimism. Then I did what I should have been allowed to do last week, show the risk map and the fixes already staged. I didn't apologize for the slide that made procurement frown. Procurement frowns are healthy. The ops director asked 2 hard questions. I answered both with numbers and dates. I didn't sell. I told the truth. It landed. When the call ended, I sent a single follow-up. Notes, next steps. The 2 defect tickets that would resolve the utilization dip. An offer to run a live test on Friday. The ops director replied from her phone, appreciate the clarity. Friday works. If you've ever been in software, you know that sentence carries more weight than any compliment. Back at my desk, HR pinged me for a quick chat. Legal wanted the native files, not just PDFs. Dan didn't ping me at all. Martin walked by and said too lightly, you know, you could have just talked to me. I finally looked at him. You already did, I said, on April 5th. I wasn't going to yell or tell him what kind of person he was or ask why. People justify their why and sleep like babies. Policies care about what. I closed my laptop, slid the drive with my duplicates into my pocket, and booked a room for tomorrow morning with HR and Legal only. The subject line was 2 words long, and it wasn't dramatic. Policy review. The next morning, the building felt wrong. Not hostile. Quieter. People whispered like a storm had passed, but left something dangerous hanging in the air. When the elevator doors opened on the 14th floor, Martin was already there, waiting near the glass doors with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Big day, huh? He said. Don't worry. HR just wants to smooth things out. Sure, I said and walked past him. His cologne, too sweet, too careful, lingered in the air like a bad decision. At 9 sharp, we filed into the conference room again. HR, Legal, and Dan at the head of the table. The air conditioner was running too cold. The fluorescent lights flickered every few seconds, and someone had set out a small tray of pastries no one touched. Alex, HR started, we reviewed your documentation. She said documentation like it was an inconvenience. We'd like to clarify a few points before determining next steps. I nodded. Martin sat across from me, posture loose, tapping a pen like he'd already won. Dan cleared his throat. Look, the client meeting went fine. Martin handled it professionally. Yes, the date got changed, but at the end of the day, the client didn't complain. So let's just move forward. Fine, I repeated quietly. Can you define that? He blinked. Excuse me? You said the client meeting went fine. I just want clarity. Because after my reconciliation session yesterday, Valian flagged 3 inaccuracies from that presentation. Inaccuracies that could expose us to liability under Section 9B of the MSA. The room shifted. Even HR looked up from her notepad. I took a thin folder from my bag and slid it across the table toward legal. Inside, printouts of the slack lines, the calendar metadata, the deck diffs, all stamped, time-synced, and highlighted. This is everything that was altered before that presentation. I'm not claiming intent, I said evenly. I'm identifying risk. Legal flipped through the pages slowly, her pen tapping once, twice, 3 times. And these are verified? Yes, I said. File hashes match the originals on the shared drive. Timestamps cross-reference with network logs from facilities. Martin laughed under his breath, shaking his head. You're really doing this? Man, you sound paranoid. I didn't look at him. I looked at legal. Could you confirm whether altering client-facing materials without review violates Compliance Protocol 4.7? She hesitated, the kind of hesitation that tells you everything. Yes, she said finally. It does. Dan leaned forward, hands clasped tight. Nobody's saying anyone altered anything. Martin just simplified. You know how Alex is, always adding too much detail. The client doesn't need every number. Legal didn't respond. HR wrote something down, her pen trembling just slightly. Can I show you one thing? I said, sliding a single printed slide onto the table. It was the client risk matrix. Mine, and the version Martin presented. Mine had 3 red indicators for known vulnerabilities. His had none. I want you to imagine this from the client's perspective, I said. They believe we have 0 risks. Then they find out later that we did, and we hid them. Do you know what that's called in procurement language? Misrepresentation. That word landed like a drop of acid. Dan's jaw tightened. Enough, he said sharply. You're making this personal. I smiled, small and calm. No, I'm making it factual. For a moment, no one spoke. The air hummed with the quiet whine of the ceiling lights. Then legal broke the silence. We'll need to pause this and review the evidence in detail. She gathered the papers like they might burn her fingers. Alex, could you stay after? HR and I would like to speak privately. Dan opened his mouth, but she cut him off. Without management present. He froze. That told me more than any statement could. When they returned from their review, Dan's chair was empty. Martin's face was pale, his mouth open just enough to make him look uncertain for the first time. Legal spoke first. We've completed our preliminary findings. There will be a formal inquiry into the conduct surrounding the Valion presentation. She turned to me. Alex, you're not under review. You're listed as the original author and owner of record for the renewal deck. HR added, voice steady but low. Effective immediately. Martin and Dan are on administrative leave pending investigation. Silence. Martin swallowed hard. This is ridiculous. You can't... Martin, legal said, her voice cutting clean through the air. We have the logs. He started to speak again, but the words died halfway out. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I simply nodded once, gathered my notebook, and said, If you need clarification on any of the evidence, I'll provide it in writing. I walked out before anyone could stop me. The hallway felt brighter, lighter. I could hear someone in a nearby office murmuring my name, but I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. That afternoon, Valion's operations director called me directly. Alex, she said, we just got off a call with your legal team. I wanted to personally thank you for the clarity yesterday. The other presentation, it didn't line up with what we'd been seeing on our end. I appreciate that, I said carefully. Listen, she continued, lowering her voice. We've been approached by another vendor, a smaller firm, aggressive pricing, but after your review, our leadership thinks the relationship might be worth salvaging under one condition. What condition? That you lead the renewal personally. Clean slate. Different structure, same contract. Can you do that? I looked out the window. Rain streaked down the glass. City lights blurring into soft motion. Yes, I said. I can. Good, she said. We'll be in touch soon. When the call ended, I just sat there. No smile, no victory gesture, just breathing. For months I'd been chasing recognition. Turns out the only thing I needed was proof. By evening, a company-wide email hit. Leadership update. Effective immediately, Daniel Reed has chosen to pursue new opportunities outside the company. We thank him for his service. Interim management to be announced. No mention of Martin. No thank you for his service. Just silence. Sometimes silence is the cleanest justice. I shut down my computer, packed my things slowly, and dropped my badge on the desk. I didn't need to be there to see the fallout. They'd dig through my exhibits, review Slack exports, maybe call me for a follow-up statement. That was fine. The truth was already moving through the system. Quiet, unstoppable. And by the time it reached the top, I'd already be gone. The HR investigation wrapped faster than anyone expected. 7 business days. That's how you know they found something solid. When a company takes months, they're buying time. When it's a week, they're cleaning up blood. The official memo came on a Monday morning. Following internal review, it has been determined that project-related materials were modified without authorization, leading to misrepresentation of deliverable status to a key client. Immediate corrective action has been taken. That was the whole statement. No names, no emotions, but the message was clear enough. Dan was gone for leadership realignment. Martin was terminated for breach of data integrity. By noon, his desk was stripped bare. The chair pushed under, drawers empty, monitor dark. Someone said he'd been escorted out with a cardboard box and a company rep walking 2 paces behind him. Nobody looked up as they passed. Offices have a way of pretending amnesia when the guilty are removed, but the quiet that followed was louder than any applause. I spent that morning rebuilding my Valion presentation, properly this time. Updated numbers, tighter visuals, the full risk profile reinstated. I wasn't doing it for Dan anymore, or HR, or even for the company. I was doing it for the client who'd believed in what we sold, and for myself. By afternoon, my boss's boss, the VP of accounts, called me in. Her tone was neutral, careful. "Alex, first off, good work containing that situation. I know it wasn't easy." "I just followed policy," I said. She smiled faintly. "You did more than that. Valion's leadership specifically requested that you continue as the primary contact for the renewal. They said your candor restored their confidence." That's not something we hear often. I waited. I knew this kind of conversation had a but coming. "But," she said, "we're restructuring the account leads. With Dan out, I'll need someone to step in as interim director for the Valion portfolio." She looked at me. "You've earned that, Alex. You'll have full authority through Q3. The word authority sat there, unfamiliar. For a second I thought about everything it took to get here. The late nights, the stolen slides, the laughter behind my back. I nodded slowly. "I'll take it." "Good," she said. "And Alex," she paused, lowering her voice, "not everyone in this building will like you after this. You know that, right?" I smiled. "They don't have to." That Friday, I met Valion's team again. This time, in person. A long glass conference table. 12 floors up, overlooking downtown. The same deck I'd built, now alive again with the real data, the real story. I walked them through everything clearly, concisely, no theatrics, no overselling. When I finished, the operations director, the same woman who'd called me after the fallout, leaned back and said, "This is the first time in months someone's told us the truth without spin." I let that sit. Then she smiled. "We're extending the contract. 2 years, new terms. We'll sign next week." For a moment, all I could do was breathe. I'd waited 3 months for that sentence. 3 months of being invisible, overwritten, erased, and now I existed again. That night, I walked home through light rain, coat collar turned up, the city humming in a soft gray haze. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Hey, Alex." This is Sarah from Horizon Analytics. We met at the Compliance Summit last quarter. I heard what happened with Valion. Would you be open to discussing a lead role with us?" I stopped walking. The traffic light turned green. The street hissed with tires on wet asphalt. I typed back, "Sure. Tomorrow works." When I got home, I opened my laptop. There were already 2 more messages in my inbox, both recruiters, both offering to chat about opportunities. I didn't answer, not yet. Instead, I clicked open one last file, valiontruth.zip, the folder that started it all. Every screenshot, every log, every timestamp, neatly organized, labeled, archived. I didn't need it anymore, but I didn't delete it. I zipped it again, renamed it Truth Archive, Final, and moved it to an encrypted drive. Not out of revenge, just memory. Proof of what happens when you stop being afraid of losing a job and start defending the work itself. The following Monday, the VP called again. "Alex, just wanted to let you know something. Valion sent over their feedback on the audit session you ran." She paused. I could hear the faint sound of papers shuffling on her end. They wrote, and I quote, "We want people like Alex on our side, not across the table." I laughed softly. "That's a first." "Whatever you did," she said, "it worked. Congratulations." A month later, I resigned. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Horizon had offered me a lead strategist position with double the salary and the freedom to build my own team. I brought with me 2 junior analysts who'd been buried under Dan's management, the kind who never got credit, but always stayed late. On my last day, I left a short note on my desk, not for anyone specific, just a line written on company stationery. "Integrity is a skill. Learn it, or you'll work for someone who has it." I didn't wait for goodbyes. I walked out, badge in pocket, head high. As the elevator descended, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. Calm, steady, older maybe, but lighter. The kind of face that didn't need applause to know it had won. When the doors opened onto the lobby, the guard at the desk nodded. "New job already?" he asked. "Something like that," I said. Outside, the rain had stopped. The pavement glistened, clean again. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the email from Horizon, and tapped Reply. Let's build something honest. Then I put the phone away and started walking, into a future that, for once, nobody else could rewrite.